players gather to cast powerful spells, some of the oldest and most powerful in the history of Magic the Gathering. Dreadhorde Arcanist, Thoughtseize, Plague Engineer, and many others. Battling head-to-head in brutal combat, they all have one thing in common: to uphold their legacy and the search for eternal glory.
The Eternal Glory podcast is sponsored by Cardboard Live, BoshNRoll on YouTube, ThrabenU University, and theepicstorm.com.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 25 of the Eternal Glory podcast, where we creatively talk about M21 since it is again spoilers season. I'm Phil Gallagher, joined by Brian Coval and Bryant Cook It on the Grill. How's everyone doing?
I'm still reeling from Bryant Cook It on the Grill.
I thought you'd enjoy that
I did cook on the grill today. I do every day now.
Finally living up to your name.
All right, Brian, what have you been up to other than cooking on the grill?
Life is kind of boring. Like, honestly, I didn't even realize that it's been 2 weeks since we recorded our last podcast until today. I guess I've been watched Space Force. And my group of friends were like, that show's awful, you shouldn't watch it, their reviews were awful. I think people just wanted to dislike it because it was fine. And not every show needs to be the greatest thing you've ever watched. Like, it was fun and it was entertaining. Like, I think that's what the show went out to do, and it accomplished it. I don't know if either one of you two have tried it or not.
Yeah, I watched Space Force, and I also thought it was fine. And I agree completely with the sentiment of not everything you watch has to be Citizen Kane. Like, there's plenty of things that can be entertaining and, like, whatever on top of that. I know a lot of people value their time in certain ways, and so do I. Like, I'm not willing to just spew my time on any stupid thing. But at the same time, like, you're not curing cancer at home at night. Like, what are you doing that you don't have 2 hours in your life to watch a movie that's not a masterpiece? So, like, I'm into that. Like, I get in this exact debate with one of my good friends, Chris, all the time. Like, he lives and dies by the tomato score. He just, like, will not watch a movie if it's less than, like, 90% or whatever on tomatoes. And it's like, this movie was a 54 and I had a good time. Leave me alone.
Look, sometimes you just
also,
need
like, the show's really short. It's like 30 minutes per episode, and I want to say there's like 8 episodes, maybe 10. Like, you can rip through it.
Yeah. This stuck with me, like, for years. Brian David Marshall once tweeted asking people what they thought perfect movies were. Like, what movie is perfect to you? And I read the whole thread because I love movies and want to make sure I didn't miss anything that's perfect out there. And somebody replied, "Dude, Where's My Car" is a perfect movie. It's a bad movie, but it's perfect. And that just, like, completely was able to define how I feel about movies better than I ever was. So, something bad can still be perfect.
Wise words. I like it.
Yeah, other than watching apparently bad television shows, I've been playing a lot of Pioneer Breach. I find, honestly, that's one of the more interesting decks I think I've ever played in Magic. Like, there's so many small decisions that go into every turn, and that's the sort of Magic I really enjoy. We talked about that a couple episodes ago with Haymaker Magic versus small decisions, and this is right in my wheelhouse. That, and I've been continuing to play a lot of Vintage. But as far as Legacy goes, I think my ambition's down at the moment. Without large events to prep for or any real reason to play, in fact, they got rid of the Thursday PTQs. There's just no reason to play Magic, and I think Legacy is a little bit boring right now, and I'm hoping M21 changes that.
Yes, please. Yes. I recorded Daily Death and Taxes for this week, which will have aired by the time this podcast episode goes live. And I chose to play sort of a white Eldrazi style deck list for the week because, like, the name Daily D&T kind of encompasses anything of that general ballpark. And I played an entire league in which I don't think a single decision that I made mattered. And I finished the league in less than an hour. And it was just like, I felt utterly defeated by the time that I was done with that league.
I hear you. I decided to play the Sunday Challenge this week, where round 1, my opponent was on Rugdelver. They had like a turn 3 Uro, and I thought that was really strange, but I was like, maybe they're going bigger for the mirror. And then they had a Mystic Sanctuary, and I was like, oh man, this deck's wild. Like, kudos to my opponent. And I go off with like Double Veil, and then I got stifled, and I just like sat in my chair for a second. And I mean, I'm not trying to like make fun of my opponent here, but I was like, why would you ever play all of those cards in the same list? Like I just can't wrap my head around it. Like, it is so far past my comprehension that I was just like, yeah, you got me. And then I went to sideboard, and like game 2, I just drew like crap and lost. And then round 2, I got crushed by Black Road Reanimator, and I was like, you know what? It's still really early. I'm going to go enjoy my Sunday. We went to a greenhouse. We bought some living plants for our home. And I was just like, this was so much better than being miserable playing Legacy all day.
Amen to that. That's how I feel every time I play in a weekend challenge for Magic Online. Like, I know I have bemoaned them in the past, but just somehow just the difference between being somewhere physically and draining a whole weekend playing Magic, like 3 hours from home, is just so much more fun than doing the same thing in my home, which seems like, you know, obviously the gathering is the missing piece there, but like, I just can't feel like I wasted an entire day if I don't, do extremely well in the challenge.
Yeah, I think I've played 4 of those Sunday events lifetime. They're just not super appealing to me because I make so much content regularly. And like, I won 1, I top 8'd 1, and I bombed out of the other 2 very quickly. And I don't know. Like, chatting with people in between rounds is such a huge difference between just like sitting in front of your computer or like trying to cram in a meal in between rounds. Like, I don't know. I don't love them.
I do for the most part, but mostly because like you can do laundry or like household things in between rounds. At least when you play a fast deck. If you're playing like a Anurag Das control deck, probably not. Like, you're not going to be able to do anything in between rounds. But it's really nice when you're like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to mow the lawn. Like, I played the vintage one last Saturday. I was literally mowing my lawn in between rounds. And I have a pretty large backyard. So it took, like, after 3 rounds I was done. But I mean, I got stuff accomplished that day, is I guess what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, as a Storm player, I'm sure it's a little different than those of us who need like 30 minutes at least per round to make it happen.
They give me 50. I'm going to use 50.
Gotta get your money's worth.
All right, Brian, what have you been up to?
So, speaking of how I don't love digital Magic, I was face down testing for this PT, the Arena PT that happened last weekend. The first wave of them, there were 4 start times you could choose from for 4 separate events. Anyone who was queued for any PT gets to choose one of the 4. And I chose last weekend because it made the most sense as an American on the East Coast. And I worked so hard. Like, I spent probably the 10 days leading up to the PT just waking up in the morning, moving to my basement, putting my laptop on my lap, and grinding Arena and being active in our team Discord. And I did that every day for 10 days. And then I thought we had a really sweet deck. Teamer Reclamation is a deck in Standard for anyone who cares that probably coulda, shoulda been banned with the last wave where they took out Fires of Invention and Agent of Treachery. And a lot of people were surprised it didn't go. And it dominated both PTs, and we thought we had a good matchup against it. I was crushing it in testing, and then game day came, and I went 2-3 against Team Rec. I played 8 rounds of Magic. 5 of the rounds were against Team Rec, and I went 2-3 against it. So I thought we had something good, but turns out that the best deck is just way better.
I'm going to pause you for a second, Brian. One, I would like to say that I love your optimism. You really bring a lot to this podcast in the form of like a lot of energy, and I appreciate that. The second thing is, what is your opinion on this? Because I read a couple of Twitter threads about this, and as someone who's ingrained in Standard or just was, do you feel like Growth Spiral violated something within the recent rules of Standard Magic regarding acceleration?
Almost certainly. I know Zvi Mauschwitz tweeted after, I think the the morning PT. I played the afternoon PT this past weekend. The morning one, I think, had the full 32 possible copies of Growth Spiral in the top 8. And I know the one I was in was pretty close to that, too. I think one Jund player made it in. But in general, Bant and Rug and Sultai were the 3 decks. And the reason they were the 3 decks was because you have Growth Spiral, where like an early Growth Spiral is functionally Time Walk, because a lot of standard decks aren't doing anything except developing in the early turns. It's not like Legacy where like turn 2 is the mid game already in some situations. Like barring like mono red aggro, turn 2 is very much still the development stage, and just a lot of games came down to just like they had the Growth Spiral and I didn't, and then all my soft permission is blanked. Like Mystical Dispute, we know about that one from Legacy. That's a standard legal card, and like if they get a Growth Spiral under you and then they're able to Uro, and then your dispute doesn't do anything because they ramped twice and you didn't at all. So I do think that Growth Spiral is probably a little too good. Being an instant is extra fucked. Like Explore did not break standard, and I'm not saying Growth Spiral broke standard but like I think it's breaking some rules that we should expect in a standard metagame these days. Being an instant where you can just like surprise, I'm at 4 mana now, or like Temur Wreck getting to like test you on your end step. It's like you have one Mystical Dispute in your hand and they're like, end step, Growth Spiral. It's like, well, do I fight that? If I fight that, they get to untap and jam Wreck, and then I lose. It's like playing against Splinter Twin. A lot of people say it's like Splinter Twin, but I actually mean that playing against Temur Wreck is like playing against the fair plan out of Splinter Twin, where like they don't even have to combo. They're going to beat you playing fair, but you have to constantly respect the combo while you're trying to beat them playing fair. And it's just, it's a pinch that's really hard to get out of.
So full disclosure, that's the first time that I've ever read that card. That card is insane. Like,
yeah,
no
dude.
wonder Standard seems so like hyper powered. Like I know nothing about Standard, but I saw some like play versus draw statistics for Standard, and it was like an incredible difference. Like, I think greater than 10% play versus draw.
It's been an issue the last few years, though.
Yeah, play draw is like in Magic in general, but this standard especially, and it's I think because of Growth Spiral, is like the only thing you can do on the draw against a turn 2 Growth Spiral is Mystical Dispute, and the standard mana base, you have all the shock lands, like those are all legal in standard right now, but all the other lands you want to play, like the Temples and Triomes, come into play tapped. So, like, it's not a good situation to, like, fight over a Growth Spiral, and then, I don't know. Like, I thought we had a super sweet deck, but it turns out the combination of Growth Spiral plus Wilderness Reclamation, which is functionally show and tell if it resolves in the standard metagame. Like, that's how it feels. Like, you just have to play in a way that you can't let this one card resolve, or else anything you do after that, it's not going to matter. So, I got crushed by the best deck. I also, 2 of my 3 losses were against previous Pro Tour champions, which didn't help. I actually played against Andrew Eilenbogen in the tournament, and he was one of my testing partners. He was on my team, and I just like mushed him repeatedly in testing. He never took a match off me for the entire week we were testing that matchup exactly, and then he just easily 2-0'd me when it mattered. So that's how it be.
So other than the Pro Tour stuff, what have you been doing to keep busy?
I finished Avatar: The Last Airbender. The show is still great. I binged Space Force, like we talked about. Season 5 of Queer Eye. I crushed that in 2 days. I watched a show called Dirty John, which is like a true crime based on a true story, like creepy, like dude taking advantage of a emotionally desperate woman with a lot of money, and like things get real crazy. Yeah, it was actually pretty good. It's got Eric Bana is the crazy guy, and I like him a lot. King of Staten Island was a really great movie that came out this week. I enjoyed that quite a bit. And I started watching season 3 of 13 Reasons Why and quit after 1.5 episodes. That show started off like its first season pretty controversially, but I thought it was really phenomenal, even though it was slightly dangerous to a certain population. If you're not familiar with the show, it deals with like suicide and sexual assault and stuff. And then like season 2 just got real dumb. And then season 3, I just like watched 1.5 episodes and was like, why is this even real? So that I'm done with that one forever. Borderlands 3, I've been talking about that for months now. As you know, they released a new like raid style feature called like a takedown, and they released the first one free, so I didn't have to pay for it. And I've been trying to do it solo because I don't have a lot. My brother, who I play with all the time, isn't leveled high enough to take on that mission yet, and my other friends who play the game are hard to get in one spot. But it takes about 45 minutes to fight through like the waves of stuff to get to the boss, and then the boss is completely busted. And then if you die against the boss, it kicks you back like 20 minutes backwards in the grind, and you have to grind back into the boss. So it's you have to dedicate like an hour to even one unsuccessful run, and that's been tough, but I keep throwing myself at it because I'm crazy.
Have like solo attempts been done? Like, is it possible?
Yes. I didn't know what it was when I first found it. Like, I just logged in one day and my like, max level character, I've cleared all the missions, and there was just a new mission. I was like, oh, that's cool, I'm in. And I just got completely ranched by the boss, and just like, oh, that was intense. And then I did a little more research and realized that you're supposed to like do it as a group, and like it's supposed to be very difficult. But I watched some YouTube videos, like try to get the strat down, and I have gotten closer. The boss has like 5 phases, and I got into the beginning of phase 4 before I died yesterday for the first time. I usually died in phase 3, so I'm getting better. Someday I'll find some friends and do it. Outside of the digital space, 2 weeks ago, I was playing Frisbee golf, which is a thing that I do. I have a course right down the street from me, and I just like yeeted this Frisbee. It took a hard shank and disappeared into the woods, and the woods are all poison ivy and thorns and horrible things that you can't really shove through, and you can't see anything because the ground is heavily grassed over as well. I started playing in like the end of the winter, beginning of the spring, when that wasn't a problem because the vegetation wasn't alive yet, and like you could just walk in and see your Frisbee easily and throw it back out. But I lost one to the woods 2 weeks ago. I used that as an excuse to buy a nicer one, and then today on my first outing with the new one, I lost it in the exact same way in the exact same spot. Just like, it's just like the 5th tee, I just fucking shanked it off the planet, and it was gone instantly. And I'm still fighting off the poison ivy I got from the first one that I waded into the woods looking for. And I'm like currently, as we're recording, just like frantically scratching my legs because it's horrible. And now that section of woods has 2 of my Frisbees.
I can't remember the pitcher's name, but there's a pitcher for the Cincinnati Reds that tweeted that their goal for being off from baseball right now is to become the best possible Frisbee golf player ever. And they're just like tweeting videos of them launching Frisbees like hundreds of yards into like straight into the target. Like, it's amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, like I haven't had like a sport to dedicate myself to since I was in high school, basically, like playing baseball. So just making those adjustments, like increasing both your technique and your physical output ability, and seeing real change in your score has been a lot of fun for me over this pandemic. The quarantine is when I decided it was time to learn disc golf because it's a thing I could do without being near anyone. And I've kept a spreadsheet of all of my scores over the past 3 months, and I have gotten better. I through my first under par outing last week. It was actually the one I lost the Frisbee on. Like, I was having the round of my life, and even like losing 45 minutes of searching and taking a penalty drop to get back on the course, like I still was under par. So it was pretty good. But that's what I've been working on. And speaking of sports, my girlfriend, who is an equestrian, has her first horse show in years this weekend. Like, in the time I've known her about 6 years probably, and I've always known she rides horses, but it's like lessons and like helping. She has like arrangements with a local barn where she gets to ride the horse in exchange for she has to exercise the horse. So she's basically like putting it through its paces in exchange for being allowed to ride it. But she's actually competing this weekend. I think she hasn't competed since high school, so it's kind of a big deal, and I'm excited to go watch that.
So, like, real questions, how does that work during a pandemic? Like,
well, we are going to find out. It's a small show. All the big ones have been canceled, there's a big one in Kentucky called Rolex that we went to a couple of years ago. Like, all of the like big like worldwide ones are canceled. This is just like a like regional thing, and it's outdoors, and I imagine it'll be reasonable to keep space from everyone. Like, I don't plan on sitting in bleachers or anything. I'll stand along the fence if I have to, and I'm gonna bring a mask and use my good judgment of if I need it in the outdoor area or not. So we'll see. I'm surprised it's happening, but Pennsylvania is currently green for whatever that means, though I'm seeing that Florida has already started to shut back down from their reopening a couple weeks ago. And I'm sure the rest of the country is on the way there too. But we have this one good weekend where I'm going to go watch some horses jump.
All right, Phil, how about you? What has your life been?
So it's weird. I'm done with, like, school, so, like, I'm done with working for the time being, but I've been in my office, like, putting in full-time hours doing, like, stream and website-related stuff over the past couple of days anyway. So probably for the past, like, week and a half, I've still, like, worked an 8-hour day doing content production stuff, which has been really weird. Mostly this is because the deck building challenge that I hosted just ended as of this week, and so I spent a lot of time putting together the results of that. People are crazy. Like, you lock them up in quarantine and say, hey, make a deck list, and the things that you will get out of them are so cool. So Shifting Ceratops, for example, was one of the cards that I asked people to brew around, and someone submitted Nethervoid Nick Fit, where the goal is to get Nethervoid into play as quickly as possible to lock out your opponent, and then play uncounterable Shifting Ceratops, Prowling Serpapod, and whatever the other uncounterable dinosaur is as your win conditions, while using your uncounterable Abrupt Decays as your removal spells. Like,
Serpapod is the 4/3 cat snake,
yeah.
Right? Yeah, I remember a lot of people were excited about that thing, like an aggressively costed, uncounterable creature with built-in card advantage, and then it just was never played. I'm glad someone found it.
Yeah, I'm going to be playing that on stream sometime either next week or the following week, as of when this podcast goes live. Other than that, I've been playing a lot of Monster Train. That game is still awesome. I'm on, like, max difficulty, doing, like, random runs at this point and trying to win streak as many wins in a row as I can get. Just absolutely in love with that game. It's been scratching my strategic itch better than Magic has been, because I feel like a lot of my games of Legacy aren't as exciting as they were in the Companion era. Like, yeah, obviously the Companion era of Legacy had huge problems, but, like, the gameplay was so intricate and interesting, and I just got, like, bored with current Legacy because it was just like Legacy of before. So that's
Haymaker Magic.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Although I did get some savage blowouts in both directions on stream today. So I lost with Karn and Mycosynth Lattice in play today, when my opponent just had Ancient Tomb up. I did not expect this to happen.
Did you get Warping Wild?
No. they floated 2 colorless mana, and my Mycosynth Lattice resolved, and then they cast Petty Theft.
Skadoosh.
And my mind was blown. Because Mycosynth Lattice lets you spend mana as if it's mana of any color. And in my mind I went, they have no outs with 2 colorless up. No, they had a blue and a colorless available.
Yeah, there is flavor text on Mycosynth Lattice that occasionally blows you out. I remember in Modern, people were talking about, like, how do they fix their, like, Eldrazi-tron mirror when it's just, like, a race to Lattice? And, like, they were like, we could just play 4 Hurkyl's Recall and just let them Lattice and then send them out. Just hold up 2 mana at all points, and that's an easy win.
I also got to play with Black Lotus in Legacy. That was really cool. Turns out, like, Lotus Field is a playable Legacy card. I had no idea. I played it with Blood Sun today and just, like, absolutely savaged people.
That's hot.
Like, I did not expect that to be good. I expected to, like, rag on that in the debrief. And then I just went turn 1 Blood Sun, turn 2 Chandra Awakened Inferno. And it was like, oh, this is a thing that can happen in Legacy.
Hot. There's a local guy who his deck of choice is always mono red sneak attack. And he plays Blood Sun in the deck. And I lost to him once when he hardcast Emrakul because his City of Traders didn't die, and they still tapped for 2, and he just kept hitting land drops, and then at some point, like, just Seething Song, Emrakul. It's just like, shit.
Yeah, it's really funny. Ancient Tomb gets a lot of hype in Legacy, but it's actually, like, a really shitty Magic card. Because, like, as the game goes on, it's like every time you tap that Ancient Tomb, it's just like, how many more of these do I have? And, like, anytime your opponent plays a Delver, you're like, ah, great, I'm dead already.
In my opinion, that's just good card design, though. Like, you get this cost up front, and later on in the game, you're punished for that cost.
Oh, yeah, I'm memeing a little bit here. But, like, when your City of Traders loses its downside, it's, like, mind-blowingly good.
Yeah, it's like Soul Ring. Like, functionally Soul Ring once it's in play, and it's just real good.
Phil, going back to your comment about working on the website, that's something that I am constantly doing. And, like, no one ever sees the upgrades that I'm making, or sometimes they do every year or two when I redesign the site, but I'm constantly making small improvements to the epicstorm.com. I might have mentioned it on the last one, but someone messaged me that the site was a little slow, so I paid for upgraded servers, and then I started doing, like, Google page speed tests and then web page tests to improve my speed rank so I could find out, like, what on the site was slowing the site down and what I could do to improve. And when we recorded in the last episode, I had just gotten up to an 87, and I was so proud. I was like, yeah, because, like, my site's really heavy. Like, there's a lot of JavaScript and stuff going on, and I was so proud. And then literally, like, 3 days later, Google announced they were changing how they were ranking websites, and I went back down to a 62, and I was like, all that work I just did is gone. So I've spent the last couple weeks, like, quietly making upgrades again, and now I'm in, like, the low 80s, which is really nice. It's just, like, I had to do so much work to get there. A lot of, like, moving and, like, delaying JavaScript and stuff like that, but it's worth it in the end.
Yeah. I spent probably about 20 hours parsing deck lists for the deck list brewing competition, and then, like, writing up my article where I announced the winners. And, like, that time, I was only able to commit that much time to it so quickly because I wasn't working. But, like, if I was trying to do that on top of the work that I normally do during the school year, like, 20 hours is a lot of work. All right. Anyway, let's go into some feedback. And I guess before we do that, as always, no new donations this week exactly, but, like, follow-up thought on that in a second. Henrik got back to us, and he informed us that we were actually pronouncing his last name wrong. I believe, Bryant, correct me if I'm wrong, is it Korkutz?
I believe that is correct.
Yeah, so it ended in a C, but it's pronounced more like a TS. So that ended up catching us. Just as a heads up, we did not receive any new donations after the last episode. You know, no pressure there, but just, like, heads up, we pay our editor, Phil Blackman, who does great work, and we dipped into the reserves a bit to pay him for this coming week. So, you know, if you like what we're doing, consider supporting us. All right.
So part of that is our friend of the podcast, Jordan Wood, who is a local to me, left a really nice bit of feedback on Reddit that I went and shared on the podcast Twitter, and I will read that now. As a fan of the podcast, I enjoy every episode, but when I enjoy an episode a little bit more, I like to throw a donation to the guys. This week, however, instead of giving to Eternal Glory, I donated to my local Black Lives Matter group in honor of the podcast. If this week's discussion moves you, I would hope you would do the same. And that's why we're thrilled that we didn't receive any donations this week. We're hoping that everyone gave a little bit to the groups around them to show support to what we talked about at the end of last week. There's a lot going on in the world right now, and just try to make it a slightly better place.
Can I take the next one?
Yeah, let me just say,
I don't like that you have such a shit-eating grin, Brian.
Just a final note on this one. It made all of us very, very happy when we received this first comment. We had done a little tiny bit to make the world a better place. Okay, Brian, now go ahead.
All right, so another piece of feedback going the other direction we got was, I really enjoyed the magic part of the episode. Regarding the politics part, the fact implied that Trump and his supporters think that Black lives don't matter is just horrendous. It really displays either extreme ignorance or malicious demonization. Much of politics is subjective, and there is room for some difference of values. But so greatly mischaracterizing the other side is absurd. I would just like to say that if the supporters of Donald Trump are not actively racist, which I believe might be the case in a lot of cases, they are certainly okay with racism. And that is the decision every one of them have made. This man just announced that his first rally for the upcoming election will be in Tulsa, Oklahoma, home of the biggest erased from history hate crime in American history, on Juneteenth, which is the anniversary of the slaves being emancipated and is a black holiday. So that's the man that you're supporting and saying that is not racist. So get your mileage where you are, but that seems pretty fucking racist to me, and it is what it is, buddy.
Brian, do you want to say the other thing that you mentioned in the group chat as well?
I don't remember what you're referring to.
Well,
I remember. So Bryant did some internet sleuthing on this person and found their Twitter, and it seems like they have never interacted with a magic content, at least publicly. So it's unclear if this person even is a magic player, or if they're a bot, or just like some internet person who was searching like Black Lives Matter in content descriptions that week, looking for places to leave comments. But it's possible this person isn't even a person, on top of their confused ideologies here.
Yeah, when I found their account, they were following 45 people and had like 20 people following them. And there was a single Magic player who they were following, but the other 39 people or whatever it was, for example, like Kellyanne Conway was someone they were following. They followed Mitch McConnell. Most of who they followed were like leaders of the Republican Party. And I have no problem with someone being a Republican for what it's worth. Like, people are allowed to have different values and see things from another light. And I tend to try to always think of how the other side views things before speaking. However, I think that there comes a point where you draw a line in the sand. And if people are trying to do something horrendous, you need to ask themselves, why are they having this motive? And I think that there's something going wrong with the Republican Party at the moment. A lot of the Republicans that were not in line with Donald Trump have been replaced. There was a young Republican senator from Massachusetts, actually, which is kind of shocking because they tend to be more blue, but they were just straight up replaced. So, I don't know. I don't think that... I don't know. I'm going to stop there.
Yeah, we don't need to do this episode again, but yep. I think we've said what we need to say without repeating last week's episode.
Yeah, let's just go into the deep dive on the spoilers. So to just kind of start... Boop the Snoop! It's going to be so good! Alright, to give you an idea of conceptually where we're going, so the last time we did a spoiler episode, we kind of felt like we were a little bit too exhaustive. We covered too many things. We were tired by the end. So instead of talking about like every single thing that like is potentially legacy playable, we're going to try to focus the episode more on about 5 cards And then if we have some additional time, we'll sort of like talk about some of the more fringe and situational cards. So let's start with Conspicuous Snoop, which is probably going to be a multi-format all-star. I am just so impressed by this card.
What is the over-under on this getting banned in Modern? Like,
can we talk about what the card does before we talk about banning it, Bryant?
I guess so.
What podcast do you think this is? All right, so I'm going to read...
I'm sorry, I thought I was on
this
Elo
card for you.
Hunters. I'm sorry.
Yikes. All right, so Conspicuous Snoop is a red creature - goblin rogue. It is a 2/2, and you play with the top card of your library revealed. As long as that card is a goblin, you can cast it. And as long as the top card of your library is a goblin, Conspicuous Snoop has all activated abilities of that card.
So there's a lot to unpack here before we even get into, like, synergies. So, like, first off, the effects that usually let you play cards off the top of your library tend to be more expensive than this, usually by 2 mana if it's not a land. So, like, at 3 mana, it's relatively common that you can play a land off the top of your library. And at 4 mana, you start to get things like Experimental Frenzy that let you play stuff off the top of your library. Now, granted, this one is a little bit conditional in that it has to be a goblin, but, like, if you're playing a goblin tribal deck where this, like, obviously slots in, that's just, like, basically any like, Ether Vial card you just get to, like, cast off the top of your library. And that alone is pretty nuts card advantage for a 2-mana spell.
I think this is the first time in my life I am now okay with Goblin Recruiter being banned in Legacy.
Yeah. That would be pretty brutal.
However, there is a card that has a somewhat similar effect for a single goblin, and that is Bogart Harbinger. I think I said that right. It's not Harbinger. There's no R after the B. But when I first read, because like people were posting screenshots all over Twitter of these cards next to one another, it didn't immediately click with me. I was like, I get that you get to put it on top, but like that's kind of cute. So you get, I don't know, how about Kiki Jiki? And then you can copy it infinitely. And I was like, okay, so you have like a bunch of tap guys. So you like copy your Snoop on the end step, and then you untap with a bunch of them. And I was just brain farting for a long time about how you actually get lethal. Was it obvious to you two?
Yes. But I played a lot of goblins, so... Like, Sling Gang Commander was already in the deck and was already absurd, as is Mog Fanatic. And, like, both of those are reasonable ways to get the kill. Sling Gang is, like, probably cleaner and plays around a few more things, and it does so in fewer clicks. Yeah.
Well, I don't think Mog Fanatic is actually legacy playable anymore. But to finish off how the combo works, so you put Kiki Jiki on top of the deck, and so this would be turn 3. So you play turn 2 Snoop, turn 3 Harbinger, you get Kiki, and now your Snoop can copy itself over and over, so you end up with a ton of tapped Snoops. And on the last one, you copy Harbinger again, you get Sling Gang, and you sack an infinite number of goblins to drain infinitely. That is the combo. This is a modern legal combo. It's a legacy legal combo, and I guess technically you could play it in Vintage if you wanted to. So the question is, like, how does this impact goblins?
I think this package is really tight, and I think it's pretty cheap to put in your deck. Like, Bogart Harbinger is kind of a brick if you're not going off with it, but if you get like Vial active and you play one of those like mid-rangey goblin games, like Goblins has always been the aggro combo control deck, depending on what the opponent is up to in any given game. And it can play all 3 of those roles at different points in the same game against the same opponent. And that's always been the strength of Goblins. And putting a card like Bogart Harbinger in your deck, like, does it just replace the Matron? Is it added to the Matron? Like, it's gonna... it's a much worse card than Matron, but it feeds a different engine. So the people, the Goblin deck building geniuses out there are going to have to figure out how far to push Goblins off of its traditional I can play any role axis and into the combo axis. And can the deck still like pile drive people out of nowhere and hold this combo in it? Like, is there room for all of those things? So it's going to be really interesting to see how this happens.
I think we get two very different divergent builds of goblins from this. So I think you can build your goblins deck to be closer to an all-in combo deck that has value-oriented game plan as well. And you just like max out on these and max out on the boggarts. And like you can try to be a combo deck that still keeps like the matrons and ringleaders so that you can grind through the control decks. Or you can basically slot in this combo for like literally 2 cards, right? Assuming you're already playing a Kiki Jiki in your goblins list, which is like kind of 50-50. It's only a 2-card slot to include this combo, assuming you can tutor it up. And that's like very, very low cost for a combo finish. I think another like fair equivalent of this is putting 1 Thespian Stage and 1 Dark Depths into your Maverick deck, where you get like the backdoor tutorable combo finish.
Yeah, I think I would start on that side of things personally if I were going to play around with this, and I might. It might be a sweet video in the near future. Like just start with goblins, and like you can play like 1 Harbinger, 1 of each, and use the matrons to find the combo as you need it. Snoop might just be a 4 of on fair value though. Like the cast goblins off the top of your deck. Yeah, that's nice.
I would expect Snoop to be a 4 of. Personally, if I was playing this deck, I think, obviously, I'm a combo player. I'd lean a little bit more on the combo side. I think I just wouldn't play Matron anymore, as Brian mentioned. I'd be focusing a little bit more on the combo aspect, probably with 3 Harbingers, a single Kiki, and then whatever the standard number of Sling Gangs are, 2 or 3. But I know a couple local Goblins players that my entire life of playing Legacy, they've played nothing but Goblins. And they both they don't like what they like in Goblins are very different things, but they both agree that Pile Driver is actually one of the worst cards in the deck. And I think they both only play 1 at this point. Like you only play it to go get it with Matron because it's not a card you actually want to draw on its own because it's just too slow nowadays.
Yeah, it's been a long time since Pile Driver was good.
So like there's also some weird cards in Goblins. I think Mog War Marshal is the best example of that, where you look at Mog War Marshal and you go like, that card sucks. And then that card is also just like unquestionably responsible for game wins at the same time. Because like it blocked a Tarmogoyf, then made 2 tokens that blocked the Tarmogoyf, or like you played it and then you had Sling Gang, or you played it with Skirk Prospector and it made a whole bunch of mana. Goblins becomes weird when you cut certain pieces of the engine, and it's going to be really interesting to see how the deck evolves. And another thing that's really weird about the Snoop is that it incentivizes you to have red on turn 2, which is not something that the deck always does because it's a Wasteland and Port deck.
I've thought of that.
So
Skirk Prospector starts to look a little bit better than it did before.
Yeah, and so like if Skirk Prospector is getting better, then like you also don't cut the Mog War Marshals, so where are the slots coming from? Like Pile Driver probably gets the axe, and like then where are the other ones coming from? Like I look forward to watching some of Goblin Lackey's content, Eli Going's content, as he figures some of this out.
So I mean no disrespect to any current Goblins player and the innovations they've been making on the deck. But I do think that there will be more minds looking at Goblins right now. And with more minds looking at decks and how to improve them, you tend to get better ideas because more people are now working on something with you. As someone who I've spent a lot of my life working on the Epic Storm, there's only so much one person can do. And having feedback to your thoughts is super helpful. And when there's more people helping out, you tend to make a lot more progress than you would if it's only you and a couple other people. So I expect a big step forward in Goblin's evolution over the next few months.
Yeah. I'm exaggerating when I say Eli is the only one working on Goblins because that's not true. But he's probably the only person with a really visible face in the Legacy community as a whole who is really pushing Goblins forward right now. Like he's got a Patreon that he does, I don't know, weekly Goblin content for. He streams it very, very consistently. Yeah, I do agree with that. I don't know how many people he actually has to turn to like talk to about Goblin stuff. Do we have anything else?
Random thought. So, depending on how you want to build this deck, is Goblin Ringleader still really what you want to be doing? Like, I'm not saying to cut the card completely, but if this is the direction that Goblins is going, is it automatically a 4 of? I'm just raising a question here. Like, I'd probably still want to play at least a few of them, but are you still I want to be casting a better Fact or Fiction Goblins deck, or should you try to be a little bit more combo oriented? Like, these are some interesting questions, because like Ringleader does play well with like you can cast this from the top of your deck aspect, but it's really poor with the not having an activated ability.
It's also really good with Kiki Jiki, though. I have done that a few times, and it feels dirty.
Could you possibly see a list with more than one Kiki?
I have played a list with more than one Kiki before. I played
wins with like Goblin Spirit Crafter or something weird like that, the champion.
The one that I played with won with Restoration Angel. So you actually played Restoration Angel in the early game to just blink fair things like Goblin Ringleader, and then you just got an infinite combo kill off of Vials later. Like your Vial on 4 puts in Restoration and Angel end of turn, and then Vial on 5 puts in Kiki, and you just win with it.
Goblin Lightning Crafter is what I was thinking of.
Oh, that's one I have not seen in many, many moons.
I'm not recommending
I built that
playing
deck
this.
I built that deck in Standard when it was around, but I've not seen it in Legacy in a very long time. Though I have seen that card when Lorwyn was new, or Morningtide. It's in Morningtide, right? Or yeah. When Morningtide was new, I know Goblins players were playing like one of it to Matron for if they needed something chunky in the mid and late game. But I haven't seen it in a long time.
Yeah. I guess one other thing to think about in terms of the Snoop is that if you build an all-in Goblins combo deck that can actually Goldfish somewhat quickly, it become like your combo matchup probably changes considerably. So as of right now, Goblins has to really hit decks like Storm hard in the post-sideboard games because they're a dog in game 1. Like, Brian, ballpark, how often do you win against Goblins in game 1?
Pretty high. I don't have my spreadsheet open. I don't want to give you a number and be wrong, but if I had to guess, it's over 80%.
Yeah, that would be reasonable, I would think. And so the sideboard often has to contain things like Mindbreak Trap to help fight back against that. But if you start to be a turn 3 combo deck, then you can realistically brace a lot of these other combo decks and not have an abysmal game 1 matchup. Now, might you be unfavored? Yeah, but it might not be a landslide anymore. And so that might like change up the way that your sideboard ends up working. And oftentimes we see Goblins, not as much now, but we used to see Goblins pivot into white for post-sideboard games for things like Thalia to try to shore up the combo matchup.
Or Thorn of Amethyst.
Yeah, that's even more common. These days anyway, because like black is essential to the deck now because of Slim Gang and Munitions Expert.
I imagine there will be Cabal Therapy somewhere in the 75.
That makes a lot of sense to me as well.
So from the combo perspective, something that I find very interesting about Snoop is, like you said, you're a turn 3 deck now. You're now in the same space as Ad Nauseam Tendrils and Sneak and Show. You're going to be able to race a lot of the combo decks in the format, including TS, especially if you're on the play, because that says TS has to have a turn 2. So you're in a much faster space now, and like you said, you don't have to play all these sideboard cards, but I wonder how other decks, if this Goblins deck is viable, how are they going to adapt to beat the Goblins deck? Because,
Engineer! I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Well, I don't think Ant is going to play Plague Engineer. I could be wrong. They might just, buckle down. But
you can just Dark Ritual it out on turn 1. Get them.
I think that the Goblins deck can actually beat Plague Engineer because Kiki Jiki is a 2-2, Snoop is a 2-2. Is Sling Gang a 1-1?
Sling Gang doesn't come into play, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, so they can just kill you through a Plague Engineer now. They're the best tribal deck for killing through Plague Engineer.
I think Harbinger might be a 2-1, though, which is part of the combo.
All right, now I feel like an idiot earlier, Brian, by the way, for saying Harbinger. I don't know. Words are tough. But I think it's a 1-1, right?
Just reading it phonetically, it's probably fine. It's a 2-1.
Okay. I did notice that they sold out the day that it was spoiled on TCG, and the cheapest one was a beat $8.50. So if you're someone that keeps all your uncommons in a box, dig those mothers out, sell them, get rich.
Since we're talking about MTG Finance, the Kamigawa shrines are all $20 bills right now.
I used to love those as a kid. I would force draft shrines all the time.
I hope you still have them in a box from all your drafts where you force them.
I do not.
It's time to get rich. Or die trying.
I was going to make that joke.
Oh, beat you to it.
Rip 50 Cent. His career. He's still alive and kicking.
He's unkillable.
It's a Magic card that I wanted to talk about. So this card is not ad nauseum. I would like to point that out. Because whenever this card is brought up online, people are just like, it's worse than ad nauseum, and the conversation ends there. Alex McKinley wrote a wonderful article for theepicsverb.com on this card. You should check that out, but I'm going to cover a few of the highlights right now. So one of the...
Are you going to read the card?
Oh, do I have to? Reading's really tough.
I think you do. This is an auditory medium.
Oh, shit. Well, we already know that.
All
I
right,
can't say
I'll read the card.
Okay.
I'll read the card. Bryant wants to do the good part. All right, so Peer into the Abyss is a 4 black sorcery, so it's a 7-drop. Target player draws cards equal to half the number of cards in their library and loses half their life, round up each time. Continue, Brian.
All right, so let's talk about the art on this card. It is disgusting. I wouldn't want to play this card.
It's so fucked.
It is hideous. It's just like a head coming out of a mouth, coming out of a head, coming out of a mouth into it, the infinite abyss. And it's just disgusting.
And if you look like really close, like behind the biggest head, you can see the mouth.
Oh, it's also coming out of the eyes.
Yeah, like every orifice, the art is coming back out of that orifice. So it's like a head vomiting a head, and the head that's being vomited is vomiting another head, and it also has like a head vomiting a little head in its eye sockets, and each of those is vomiting a little head.
I can't wait to buy a Japanese foil one. But yeah, this card's not ad nauseum. So the biggest thing for me personally is I am a Epic Storm pilot. This card costs 7 mana. Burning Wish into this will be 9 mana. Currently, the Epic Storm plays Burning Wish into Infernal Tutor into ad nauseum, which is also 9 mana. So this allows you to cut one step out of that, which is interesting because now you can theoretically play turn 1 double Lion's Eye Diamond, turn 2 Burning Wish, cast Peer into the Abyss, and not lose the Mindbreak Trap. So that's actually really huge. And it's actually worded a little bit differently. Peer says draw. Ad nauseum does not, which means that Peer is not so great against Narset or Leovold, which is kind of a downside to this card. Alternatively, there is an upside in the fact that you can cast this card from 2 life and win the game, where Ad nauseum from 2 life is a little bit suspicious. So they're not exactly the same card, but in my opinion, the biggest difference between them is a deck like Ad nauseum Tendrils, which, let's face it, they could honestly use a card right about now. I know that Max Carini recently did well in the Showcase Challenge, but it's a deck that hasn't really gotten any new tools in a while. Peer into the Abyss allows them to rebuild their deck a little bit, so that way they can abuse the higher casting cost cards. They can play the double Past in Flames package if they want to. They can play Dark Petition and not have to worry about revealing 5-drops. They can just draw 30 cards. Or I guess 30 is not realistic, but they can draw 22 cards on average, and I have to worry about not flipping any Lotus Petals or anything like that. Because even if they fail, they might be at 10 life or 8 life or something along those lines.
So when I look at this card, the biggest question I have is like, is this Bolas's Citadel, where it's close but not quite there? Or is this like closer to an Echo of Eons, where like you can actually build around this and truly incorporate this into a strategy? And I don't think we get to know the answer to that question until we start playing with it. But like, I am not dismissing this 7 mana sorcery. Like, I very much think this could be the real deal.
If I had to guess, it's probably somewhere in between the two. But I do think Ant is a little bit unique in the fact that Cabal Ritual almost casts this on its own. You're 2 away. And that's something the Epic Storm cannot do. And I'm not saying that I build a deck with like 3 of these in the main deck. I think that's a little bit crazy, but perhaps it slots over the Ad nauseum and Ant. which probably won't cause a name change. I know that I saw some people in the Storm Discord asking if the deck name would change. That's not how Legacy works. No one ever changes their deck names.
Just tell people it's Abyss Nauseam Tendrils.
There we go.
There's an A in this card name.
That does work. I like that. That's why we brought you onto this podcast, Brian.
That's my contribution to the Storm section of the cast. I'm glad I could be here. Haymaker Burn has a new A in A&T.
All right, Brian, do you have more that you want to say about this? Like, I know there's an article that really, like, dives into some of the math and such, but, like, do you want to say any more?
I think I'm good.
Okay. Hold up. No. I just realized there's a version of this card that has flavor text. Oh, don't be so dramatic. When your eyes bleed and your brain leaks out your eyes, then we'll talk about lost sanity.
See the truth. I had a number of people message me about this immediately upon it being spoiled. They're like, does this make Past in Flames playable again in Legacy? Well, I don't even think it makes Past in Flames playable in Modern. Like, it's a really cool card. Like, it's somewhere in between.
Can I read the card before we break it down again?
I'm so bad at this.
No, nobody can see this. All right. Once again, let me read this magic card for you people listening with your ears. So, See the Truth is 1 and a blue, 2 mana sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 into your hand, the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. If this spell was cast from anywhere other than your hand, put each of those cards into your hand instead. So it's Anticipate as a sorcery with huge upside. All right, continue, Brian.
I was going to say it's somewhere between Anticipate and Ancestral Visions. But, so you have to have some sort of way of flashing back the See the Truth via Snapcaster Mage, Past in Flames, or something like Shardless Agent. Not necessarily flashing back, but you're casting it for an alternative mode, essentially. And with Past in Flames, in both formats, the decks that win with Past in Flames, they're usually deterministic. Like, they're not going to cast Past in Flames looking to value cantrip. So it's not really the right home for See the Truth. But I could see Shardless Bug, for example, trying to upgrade. Like, they recently got Gilded Goose to replace Deathrite Shaman. And maybe this is upgraded Ancestral Visions that isn't so terrible to draw in the late game. Just a thought.
Yeah, I agree with Brian that this doesn't belong anywhere near a Storm deck or a deck that would have Past in Flames in it. However, Shardless Agent and Snapcaster Mage. Snapcaster Mage, obviously, Legacy staple, has never gone anywhere since its printing, top of the world. And Shardless Agent was one of the best decks, like solid tier 1 in Legacy for a long time. And it's been pushed out by more powerful things you can do, better ways to control the game, etc. But cascading into draw 3 is the reason that deck ever existed. And this card, like Brian said, is much better than Ancestral Vision off the top. Like, being able to anticipate is worth it. And I'm not sure where it would fit into like a Snapcaster control deck. I'm not sure that Miracles would ever make room for this thing. There's just so many good cards you'd want to put in your Miracles deck. But
I could see it maybe in like a Stoneblade type deck.
Maybe. It's paying twice as much for your Ponder is a bad deal. Like, Anticipate is not even close to a Legacy playable Magic card, but draw 3 is really hard to get away from for 2 mana.
It's probably a little bit better when you're playing an effect like Gilded Goose, right?
Maybe. I don't. As a person who has had a lot of Gilded Geese in play in Modern, it's a bad mana creature. Like, no, don't gasp at me. I'm telling you the truth here. So, Gilded Goose, the fact that it requires you to eat a specific type of permanent from the battlefield to make mana, like, like, in Legacy we have Birds of Paradise, and that card I think is just better. And I ran into it in Modern all the time. It's like turn 1 Goose, turn 2 Oko, and now I'm still two turns away from my Urza or Karn, because I guess if your turn 2 is Oko, you can shit out some foods. But like some other 3-drop, like turn 1 Goose, turn 2 Leovold, and then it's like Now you're holding your Goose is just a 0/2 in play for a while. Like it's not the kind of longevity you want out of a mana creature. There's reasons you would want it. Like if food is actually a relevant thing, like if pay 4 mana, gain 3 life is somewhere you'd want to be against burn or whatever, like Goose has some utility. But I think in a deck that like a Cascade deck, I don't know, like having mana creatures in your Cascade deck that don't win the game like Deathrite Shaman did, I'm not sure. I don't see that package really working out.
I think the upside of Goose in Legacy is that it's actually like an end game card that helps you to like recoup your losses from the early game. So like in most of the games that I've been impressed with Gilded Goose, it's because like I've made it to turn 7 and then I stabilized the board, and then like every turn I just made another food and gained more life, and that's just what kept my Delver opponent from closing out the game. It's great in that respect, but like it is very bad as a mana dork, and you're just like playing it to help enable Oko.
Right, yeah, like having a food laying around is a totally different equation than having a land in someone's graveyard. Like the comparison to Deathrite Shaman is not a good one, obviously, because that's a ban-worthy card and is too good for the format, and Gilded Goose is definitely not. But the type of thing that it does, the value you get out of it in a later game situation, I don't love. I think I would play Noble Hierarch in a deck like this over Gilded Goose. But I guess it depends on what your goals are and what your matchups end up looking like.
So one of the reasons why Shardless Bug was such a good deck is that when it was good, Magic, and more importantly, Legacy, was very fair. Like, the fair decks were what the format was about. And I'd say over the last 5-ish years, all of the best decks in the format have tended to be somewhat fair, but the format itself has become a little bit more degenerate. And I feel like that's part of the reason we saw Charlotte's Agent disappear. Is like, who cares if you're getting a 2/2 if I'm killing you? And I think that started to shift back towards fair with the printing of Force Negation, because like the crazy stuff in the format has been slowly going away and people are starting to play more fair cards again. Because why would I ever play something crazy like Oops All Cells if I know my opponent can have 7 Force of Wills? And I think that leads strongly towards the favor of something like a Charlotte's Agent. Granted, I don't think Charlotte's Bug is the greatest deck ever or anything like that, but with enough new printings such as See the Truth, we could eventually get back to a point where it's playable.
Yeah, I mean, Shardless Bug was always really bad against combo because it could only play 4 counter spells. Because if you cascade into your Spell Pierce, you're going to want to die. But like you only got the 4 Force of Wills. But now with Force of Negation, they can play up to 8 counter spells. I'm sure they wouldn't want them all, but they could have up to 8 counter spells and still be cascading into See the Truth, which is pretty interesting. And discard spells are great against combo too, like cascading into Thoughtseize or Hymn to Turok. Like that's a good line. There was a 40 Duels event in at Jupiter Games, like the week Plane Chase came out. Like I remember like going to the local store, making sure I bought 2 of the copies of the deck. I had my Shardless Agents, and my solution in that tournament was I sideboarded 3 Sensei's Tops and 3 counterbalances, and like I'm okay cascading into those. And the tournament didn't go well. We Hymn to Turok was certainly a better plan that I just didn't have in my deck, but it was early, and like there are some pieces of interaction that are worth cascading into and good against combo.
I've had a number of Charlotte's Agents in my life cascade into Flusterstorm, and then I fist pump a little bit before they die. So that will probably not happen anymore with Force Negation.
Yeah, and now you can cascade into Collector Roof.
Let's not talk about that one. I don't need that.
Let's
sort of
talk
negativity
about
in
that
my
some
life.
more. Woo! Phil just sat up in his chair. He's paying attention now.
Man, I've gotten so hosed by Collector Oof playing so many different decks. But this isn't a love letter to that. Let's keep talking about See the Truth.
Wizards should stop printing no art effects. They make my life
They
worse.
should make them cost 1.
They just did that with deafening sounds. Leave me alone, Brian.
All right, so See the Truth. Speaking of deafening silence, you can put that in your Cascade deck too, because Shardless Agent is a creature and it cascades into a spell, and you're still good.
I don't like these ideas.
All right, it's beautiful. Make Shardless great again, 2020. All right. So I think the biggest thing with See the Truth is like you need to ask yourself, is the juice worth the squeeze? Because like this is a sorcery speed card, and that's a real downside for like a lot of the Snapcaster Mage decks that might want to try and work with this card. So like something like Miracles, for example, or like the 4-color control decks that are interacting at instant speed a lot of the time with things like Ice Fang Coatl. You lose a lot of flexibility by playing something like this. So like you have to ask yourself, is the improved end game worth the like slightly more questionable early game? And like that's going to be a very metagame specific thing, but I'm excited to see where this card goes.
Yeah, as part of a package, like Miracles is going to have the Flusterstorm, Spell Pierce, Counterspell type stuff in it, and they don't want to pay 2 mana on their turn. But a deck like Shardless that can only play pitch counters anyway might be fine just tapping out on turn 2 to make sure they have that turn 3 Shardless Agent. Dig 3 cards deeper, find the land, find the agent, whatever. If there is a deck that's going to be comfortable casting Anticipate, it's going to be one that only has pitch interaction anyway.
There's a lot of decks that have tried to jump through hoops for better card draw. So Of One Mind is another recent card that kind of does something similar. Like, obviously it's different. It's like reduced cost for, what is it? It's like a 1 mana draw 2 if you have a human and a non-human. So like that's a hoop that a lot of people were willing to jump through for the upside, where they're like, the card isn't always going to be good, but when it's good, like, it swings the game hard. I think that's kind of the same sort of thing that we're going to see here.
Could See the Truth see play in a 4-color pile sort of deck or a Grixis control deck?
I don't see it. Those cards or those decks are playing all those colors because they're so full of good cards. Like I don't know what card the upside of flashing back See the Truth with your Snapcaster Mage would be worth replacing like the efficiency of like a Ponder or like a Abrupt Decay or something. Like, where does this even go?
Well, it could go on
I
the
don't really
Of One
see it.
Mind slot, right?
Haven't those decks fallen off anyway?
They
Don't
were pretty
tell me
cringe
that
to
deck-
start with.
Like that deck won 1 PTQ in the hands of a really strong player. I don't know if the deck was ever actually good, but if the engine is online, it's good. But that engine, like the difference is that with Of One Mind, you can just sit on that, do other things, play a normal game of Magic until you draw your Young Pyromancer, and then just start shredding through your deck. If you draw your See the Truth instead of Cascade into it, you're stuck with that thing. Like, you could brainstorm it away and then Cascade into it if you want to get the value later, but it's a lot harder to turn back on.
Yeah, that makes sense. I also think it's really hard to slot this into a Grixis or 4-color control deck right now when like they have Astrolabe, so they get to play like the most efficient and best cards of every single color without like yielding to deck building constraints. So like trying to make them jump through extra hoops when they don't have to doesn't seem like a winning battle.
That's fair.
Yeah, like compare this to like Kolagon's Command or Leovold, or what card could possibly be even close to competitive with the deck slot to put See the Truth in. Like, I'm not feeling it.
All right. Speaking of cards that would see more play if Astrolabe decks weren't everywhere, let's talk about Eliminate. So
This card's really cool.
I'll read the card. It's short. It also has like baller art. Destroy target creature or planeswalker with converted mana cost 3 or less for 1 and a black. So, goodbye,
It's
Smother.
an instant for what it's worth.
Yes, thank you. Goodbye, Smother. We enjoyed your time in this world, but welcome to 2020 Power Creep. I love this card.
This card has been a long time coming. Like, they've needed to print more versatile Planeswalker removal for a very, very long time. The problem is that this card exists in the same color pie somewhat as Abrupt Decay, and it's going to struggle to find slots because, like, if you're already playing black, the push to green isn't that large of a stretch unless you're playing something like Grixis. Theoretically, you could play something like Esper, but I think you get more options if you're playing white. So it's interesting. Like, I don't know if this card will actually end up seeing play, but I could see it.
I think this card... Alright, in the hypothetical world where, like, Astrolabe or something eats it at some point in Legacy, this card becomes very good because, like, you don't get to just play Abrupt Decay for free in most of your decks anymore. And I think, like, straight up Grixis decks, like maybe a Grixis Delver deck would play this. I don't know. It's kind of weird because, like, they can answer Oko, which is, like, the primary thing that you want to be answering with a card like this. They can answer that with Pyroblast anyway. But this is a card that is, like, 100% good in Legacy based on power level. But does it have a ton of homes at the moment? Maybe not.
People would have killed for this back during the Ren era.
Oh my god, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this, like, obviously, again, we're assuming that you're not in greens for some reason. This picking off non-blue planeswalkers is the big game. Like, you mentioned Ren and 6, which is obviously gone, but, like, the, like, Knight of the Reliquary is still around. Like, a lot of the times as a Delver deck, like, you have this deck, this sideboard full of Pyroblasts where it's like, oh, I need these for my Okos or whatever. And then you play against the Maverick deck and you're just like, well, shit. They're going to just muscle me around. Eliminate, just the versatility of this card is obviously really great.
There's also a decent number of 3-mana planeswalkers that do see Legacy play. 4-color Loam, for example, regularly plays some combination of Lily of the Veil, Lily Last Hope, Kaya, whatever it's called, is starting to become more popular as well. You run into Narset from time to time in other decks, and we're only going to get more push planeswalkers. So, like, other things are going to filter into the format that this is going to answer. Notably, this also gives a lot of fringe strategies an answer that they never had before. So a mono black deck like Pox, for example, sometimes...
Shout out Leaving a Legacy chat.
Yes, of course. Sometimes plays 4... What is it? Is it called Spark Removal? The black destroy a planeswalker and then put counters on your own planeswalkers? Elder Spell, thank you. Sometimes plays like 4 Elder Spells in the sideboard to deal with Oko because it's such a problem card. And now they get to play something that is, like, A, potentially main deckable, and B, is much more flexible and a better use of sideboard slots as a whole.
Have they never heard of Dystopia? Cumulative Upkeep 1?
I have played that card at least 3 times in the last 3 months.
I don't even know if that's actually what Dystopia does. Is it pay life?
I don't remember what it does. It's always bad when I play it.
Yeah, it's not a good card.
It
is pay 1 life, not 1 mana.
Yeah, cumulative upkeep, pay 1 life. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, they sacrifice a green or white permanent. And it's a 1 black enchantment.
It will get that Oko eventually. You can cast it off Dark Ritual.
I have won a game with that
card. You can sing the name of it like Rihanna.
I will admit. I played it against, I think it was either a Maverick or a Death and Taxes player, and I just played it on, like, turn 2 or 3. And they just, like, typed really in the chat and then conceded.
Got him.
Yeah. I'm so excited that this card exists, and I think this bodes well for future printings, and, like, we're actually going to get more reasonable answers to planeswalkers in the future. That makes me very happy.
A somewhat unrelated note. Eliminate was spoiled on Reddit about a week before it was officially spoiled. Someone posted that, hey, this card's going to be coming out sometime next week. Do we see that as an issue that where Wizards is confiding in people to release cards and then this information keeps on getting out earlier?
I mean, yes. I don't like that leaks exist, and I don't like that MTG Finance insiders knew about the Pioneer format weeks before it was announced and were able to spec on all of that stuff. Like, all of that stuff is concerning. And unfortunately, we just live in a world that there's some incentive. I don't know if it's like social media clout, like Twitter followers or like Reddit upvotes or whatever, that like if you actually have a legitimate spoiler that bears out to be real, like what clout that buys you. Like, I think it's a problem.
I used to follow official spoiler stuff, and it was kind of cool to see everything sort of like come out in the like wizard orchestrated way where like you're sort of like following along everything in a cool progression, and like sometimes you're taking away something really cool from an artist or content producer when you spoil their card early, and that's like definitely a feel bad thing for me. But I think the finance things about it are actually what concern me the most.
Yeah, I remember what Brian was talking about with the Pioneer leak, where like things just skyrocketed. Like anything that was going to be worth money was already $30.
Yeah, like the sets from RTR Forward were getting bought out on Modo like 2 weeks before Pioneer was announced. And like Sperling did a deep dive on his YouTube channel. He basically went like investigative journalist and did an episode where he like tracked down the posts in the MTG Finance that said like a new format's coming. It's RTR Forward, no fetch lands. And then he like talked to the guy who made that post and talked to another guy. And then like it's like a 20-minute video. And I think he did a pretty good job like pointing out or like digging and then like pointing out like who the problematic people in this chain of events are, and like if there are any legal ramifications to anyone along the way, because he's also a lawyer. But if you're interested in that, it's on his channel. But I taking something away from a content producer or maker is like the worst part for me. Like as a content producer, it's like I've never gotten a card, but if I did and I like worked really hard to make an exciting way to unveil it, and like I was counting on it to get like clicks on my site or whatever, and then it's just on Reddit a week earlier, that would be pretty brutal.
Yeah, like all three of us in the grand schemes of Magic are kind of like small content creators, right? Like we're big names in the Eternal scene, but like in the grand scheme of things, we're small. So like if we were given a preview card, say for the podcast, that would be like super, super exciting for any of us. And to just like have it be spoiled on Reddit like the day before the video that you made that you spent 10 hours making goes live, that would be devastating.
Yeah, like we know what it goes into making and editing a YouTube video. And like I know Allie Warfield got a preview card, and she made a really nice like 90-second long video or whatever, where she was like created like a board state on Arena, and she was like, oh no, how do I answer this? Like that doesn't do it. And like cards from the past were popping up like next to her like as she was thinking about it. Then like this new card we've never seen before materialized, and she's like, yeah, that's the one. And clearly like someone had edited that card into her video on Arena as if she could cast that card now. And it was like, I bet 12 hours of work at least went into that. Like you have to like write the script, you have to do the editing, you have to record it, you have to do the cropping in. Like that's a ton of work. And if someone had just been like, hey, there's a more different Spell Pierce being printed on Reddit a week earlier, that would have been less fun.
All right. So let's talk about Frantic Inventory now. So this is 1 in a blue instant. Draw a card, then draw cards equal to the number of cards named Frantic Inventory in your graveyard. So, unquestionably, this is an accumulated knowledge upgrade, right?
Phil?
Brian, do you have any questions?
Phil, we've already been over this. It's not an upgrade. I disagree with you very strongly. I'm doing Trump hands right now because I want this to be a meme, but it is not an upgrade. So, sure, it is no longer symmetrical. That does not mean that it is better. There was a lot of skill that went into AK mirrors. Like a year and a half ago when Lawrence Herman brought AK back into everyone's life after the death ray banning. the mirror had a lot of skill involved with like how long can I afford to sandbag this accumulated knowledge and then allow my opponent to draw 2. And it was this cascading effect, and it brought a lot of like interesting decisions into the game where Frantic Inventory just removed that entirely, because it's like, why are we trying to take interesting aspects of Magic away? Like, we should be trying to make the game more interesting, and like just making the same card but not symmetrical. Like, that's boring. And I don't think that's exactly what this game needs. I do think it's cool that it's now Modern legal and Pioneer legal, but who cares? I don't know.
So I've cast, I mean, I don't know all of your life stories, but I imagine I've cast more accumulated knowledges than anyone else in this cast.
I don't know if I agree with that.
All right. And I am not sure which one I would play if I were building a deck. I agree that AK mirrors were pretty interesting. Like, figuring out what level your opponent was on was important. Like, if they're just going to fire off AK starting turn 2, then maybe you want to leave in all 4 so you can, because you'll always be like paying off slightly better than them. If they board down to just 1, then you should board out all of yours. Like, if they leave all 4 in, maybe you just leave in 1 or 2 and you just get paid off in the late game. Like, there was a fun dance about that. But at the same time, like, that deck was built to be able to draw cards like cantrip through its deck starting turn 2, and having to come off that plan, it in some ways is interesting and skill testing, and in other ways is just like eye roll, because that's how cards worked back then. Like, is this card neutered now? Is it dumbed down now? Or did they just not know any better back then? Was it a mistake back then and it's fixed now? Or was it right back then and it's dumbed down now? I think there's an argument for either one. And I'm not sure how I would build a deck right now with both of these cards in existence.
I think it's a change in design philosophy. So back then, sorry, Phil, you cut out a little bit, but I think I got what you were saying. So back then, cards had downsides, which Magic cards today just don't have them. Someone in a Facebook chat that I'm in shared a photo of the new hexproof shark jumping out of the water to kill somebody on a ship. And I was like, oh, it also has prowess, or I think it has prowess. It's like hexproof prowess. It costs like 6, and it's like a 5/6 or something. It's a common. But in my mind, when I saw the art, I immediately went back to like the 7th edition serpent text, where this creature can't attack unless its opponent controls an island. But there's no way that would ever be printed on a card now. Like, Wizards doesn't print cards with downsides because they're unfun for new players. But I think that the deck building constraints around them back then was a lot more interesting. Like, we're never going to see the leeches ever be reprinted because like that was no fun for anyone.
Yeah. So for starters, I think using Island Home as your example of a cool mechanic was a huge miss. Like,
is that what that mechanic was called?
Well, Island Home was can't attack unless your opponent controls an island, and dies immediately if you don't control an island at any point.
Is that how the serpent worked?
And there were some serpents that like were allowed to continue existing no matter what you had, but could only attack if there was an island. But Island Home, a number of serpents from like the Mirage and Visions era had that, where both players needed an island for this card to function. And those cards were just bad. Like, I don't think it's interesting that's like, I'm going to put a 5 mana creature in my deck, or 6 or 7 mana creature in my deck.
Sea Monster is 6 mana for clarification.
Sure, there's many sea monsters that existed in that era. It's like, am I going to put a 5 mana creature in my deck that can only attack 1/5 of the time? Like, assuming my opponent has islands at like that. I don't think that's interesting or good for the game.
I was thinking more along the lines of limited, like you had this like sideboard bomb, but not everything is constructed playable.
Right. So, and then I don't know if we were recording or if we were talking about this before we went live, but Ancient Tomb, like, that's a card that has really interesting tension. It does something unfair, but the cost is real. Like, if you don't win with your unfair jump start, you're going to lose because your life is so low. And that's an interesting design balance. And what's the most recent example of a card like that? Like, Is there one from recent memory? I know War of the Spark like ruined everything with the one-sided Planeswalkers statics. Like that was. I'm unimpressed with that.
I can't remember the last
like,
playable card that was printed with the downside.
Some of the hate bears
Yeah.
from a few years back were probably symmetrical, and they like technically hurt you sometimes, but
Yeah, like Arbiter is still symmetrical. That's Scars of Mirrodin though. That's still like pretty old now in the scheme of Magic. That's a 10-year-old.
Spirit of the Labyrinth. That's newer.
Yeah, that's a little
Was
newer.
it Dranith Magistrate the
Spirit-
one that I was upset that wasn't symmetrical?
Yeah, Dranith Magistrate is not symmetrical.
I don't know.
Yeah, so yeah, like I'm honestly not sure where I stand as a person who doesn't design games for a living. Like I wish that interesting cards like Ancient Tomb were still printed. But I know that Marrow has written many times about how new players hate pain lands. And that's why the pain lands haven't been printed in a long time, even though they're just like a totally fine cycle of dual lands for any standard set. Like we've got like temples and triomes and shocklands and all these things that aren't pain lands because new players hate them. And this has come up like the last 3 weeks in a row in some form or another, but I think that anything that grows the game is good, as long as we're not just like breaking the game. Like I think War of the Spark pushed the limit on like what a non-symmetrical effect could be, and a number of those cards were too good. But like I don't think a 7-mana common Sea Serpent type creature not having Island Home is a problem.
Going back to Frantic Inventory for a second. So, like, obviously I set up...
Coward.
I mean, we can talk about Island Home for a little bit longer.
I wasn't trying to say that I was upset about
Inventory.
specifically some serpent. I was just saying that I missed downsides on cards. Like, not everything needs to be at 8 out of 10.
I do think Hexproof is a worse mechanic.
I
than
agree.
Shroud.
Oh,
just
man.
like worse for the game. But I'm not in charge of selling packs, so fuck me. but in most of the situations where a thing like could be a little more difficult to make work, I don't mind that it's not. Anyway, Phil, Frantic Inventory.
So, like, obviously when I introduced this card, I was setting up Bryant's little point here. So the way that I viewed Frantic Inventory when I was looking at it is I viewed it as this is a card that removes the early game constraints that sometimes AK has. So let's say that you're playing either a mirror or a pseudo mirror, and you need to cast your AK before your opponent does. That puts you into a really awkward situation, right? So playing Frantic Inventory helps to smooth out your early game. And a lot of times, if you're the better player, over the course of a long, 10 plus turn game, you can leverage your choices, your skill in so many other situations to pull yourself ahead that I think Frantic Inventory a lot of times ends up being an upgrade because it helps to smooth out your early game that might be awkward. Say you need to hit land drop 4, can you cast your turn 3 or 4 AK to make that happen? It gets a little weird, right?
Yeah, that's exactly the situation that I was thinking about when I was saying I wasn't sure which one of these I'd play in a deck today. Like, in a control mirror, which any AK mirror is likely to be, hitting your land drops is the most important thing. Like, it barely matters what's in your hand until, like, turn 7 or 8. And the hitting your land drops, whoever starts missing land drops first is going to have to start casting spells, and then they're going to lose. And that's how control mirrors work. And just like needing to hit land number 3 and 4 and casting an early AK, knowing that I'm going to get buried by my opponent's AK, sucks. And that's as a person who's been here through like the warts and pain of Magic, like been playing since 96. I was there when like for Island Home and whatever. I remember. And I think that like losing like Phil said, like the equity of playing a good game of Magic versus like being able to outmaneuver your opponent when everything's going perfectly for you. So like I like that frantic inventory exists, and it's going to be really interesting.
Also keep in mind that like AK mirrors were never super common, and the decks that play them often run an entire cantrip suite dedicated to hitting your land drops and everything else. Like, I think what you're describing isn't common enough to make the decision to run frantic inventory over AK. Like, it's not going to matter anymore, but like, I needed to hit my land drop on turn 3. Like, that was going to come up so infrequently compared to, I think, outmaneuvering your opponent and like having a better late game.
Yeah. Our sort of like patron, Wilson Hunter, in our group chat said, yeah, I'm still playing AK every time for the potential upside of being able to like outplay opponents in AK mirrors.
Yeah. And like it being uncommon is true, but it's non-zero, which is a deck building consideration. Like when I'm playing elves, like, and I want 2 Llanowar Elf effects in my deck, I'm gonna split them between like a Llanowar and a Findhorn because it's non-zero. Like Cabal Therapy and Phyrexian Revoker exist, and it's probably not going to come up very often, but if it does, it matters. So, just like I don't think that shrugging it off as like AK mirrors are uncommon, so...
Phil, aren't you someone that doesn't split your
it.
basic planes?
No, I split my planes 100% of the time. There are other certain heathens in the Death and Taxes community, who I will not name here, everyone knows who they are anyway, who like want to have matching art for their planes, so they like won't split. But like predict, like, if you can do something to play around some weird fringe scenario, it will win you some game. Now, maybe it's 1 in every 100 games, or maybe even more than that, but, like, those fringe interactions, like, really add up over the course of playing Legacy.
Yeah, like, all of those, like, the tiniest things, like you just said, matter in Legacy. Like, there was a time, I was watching some stream where Cyrus Cormagill was on the call helping the streamer navigate Storm. And they had a pretty clear line of like some number of rituals to an empty hand, Infernal Tutor, win the game. And the person started clicking through and Cyrus was like, wait, play the Infernal Tutor second to last and then respond with your last Dark Ritual to play around Piracy Charm. And the streamer was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then they pitched Piracy Charm to their Force of Will on the Infernal Tutor. And like those tiny little things, like obviously they still lost because they had the Force of Will, but like those tiny little things in deck building and sequencing they're gonna matter some number of the time. You're gonna lose some equity over the course of your life if you don't at least put some serious thought into it.
So what you're describing is a lot more common with Vendilion Click. Granted, Click doesn't see a lot of play anymore, but that was often a way of beating Click, was to cast your Infernal Tutor, then go Dark Ritual, Cabal Ritual. Does this resolve?
All right, so Frantic Inventory. I'm definitely slightly salty that this might hurt the foil value of Accumulated Knowledge, because I have a set of Nemesis foils, and they're fucking gorgeous. So I might just play those for that reason only.
This card is a 0 out of 10 in my book.
I think this card is a Accumulated Knowledge out of 10. Like, literally whatever AK is out of 10, this is exactly the same.
You're a 0 out of 10.
And that's why he's on this podcast. Fits in with the rest of us.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I'd be working somewhere getting paid if I was any better.
All right. So do we want to keep going with some of these other cards here? Okay. To wrap up the podcast today, we're going to do some quick hits. So we spent a lot of time discussing just like about 5 cards this time around, and now we're just going to quickly say a few things about some other things that are probably Legacy playable without like really diving into a lot of stuff about them. So let's start with Sublime Epiphany, which you might have dismissed at first reading it because it is a 6-mana blue spell. So it's 4 colorless and then blue for an instant. Choose 1 or more. counter target spell, counter target activated or triggered ability, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, and or target player discards a card.
Draws a card.
Sorry, draws a card. Blech.
Piracy charm still in
Yes.
your head.
Okay, so where might this see play?
Definitely not with Omniscience. Anywhere else.
Yeah, this is definitely an Omniscience Cunning Wish sort of thing. The Cunning Wish sideboards out of Omniscience decks tend to have a bunch of like derpy looking spells that are there only as protective options if you stick Omniscience, and then like one of the things, like if you cast Show and Tell, you put in Omniscience, they put in Reclamation Sage. Being able to Cunning Wish for a stifle effect at instant speed and stifle the Reclamation Stage lets you continue comboing. Sublime Epiphany will just take over that kind of slot because it's free. It's free to do. Like it, if you can get 6 mana worth of value off of your free spell rather than 1 or 2, I think that's worth doing.
I think the question becomes, is what's the word I'm looking for here? Consolidating your sideboard slots worth the occasional 5 mana stifle that you have with Cunning Wish? It probably is, because as someone who plays a Storm Wish board, the fewer slots the better. But I'm just saying that like you do lose the 5 mana, hey, I'm going to Cunning Wish stifle your thing that was going to kill me.
Yeah, this is definitely not like a strict upgrade. This is one of those things where it probably sees play to consolidate like 2-ish sideboard slots into 1, but like you do lose out on some hard cast value by doing that.
Yeah, like you lose the 5 mana like Wish for Trick Bind, but you gain the 9 mana like end step, turn 4 or 5, Wish for this, now you're holding it. Like in a longer sort of game. So there's some push and pull there. Like 6 mana is a lot in Legacy.
If you ever
obviously,
hardcast this, you just have to high five everyone around you.
But like I can totally see a world where you're playing against like a Maverick deck where they probably do have Rex Sage or like Kasali Pride Mage or something that makes it unsafe to Show and Tell, but you need to stay alive and like bounce their Knight of the Reliquary, draw a card, stifle their Wasteland or whatever, like all at once. Like it could be sweet. It could be sweet.
Thought we weren't going to reach on this podcast episode.
All right, quick hits. We'll move on then. All right,
I got a quick hit for you. It's probably more of a quick miss, but Silver Smote Ghoul is 2 and a black. It's a zombie vampire. It's a 3/1. At the beginning of your end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, return this from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped, and 1 and a black, sack it, draw a card. So I don't know what space looks like in a dredge deck or manaless dredge deck, but this combos directly with Creeping Chill. This is a creature that can jump from your graveyard into play for free, and if your deck has mana in it, you can sack it to dredge some more. So it might find a home, might not, and I guess we'll see.
I feel like this is
don't have a whole lot to say
more
about that one.
closer to modern playable, because the modern dredge deck does play Creeping Chill where not all legacy versions do. And I think that this card is actually like one of those like get a place out of them, store them away in case there's ever anything dredge playable that gains life, because that would be 2 ways to enable it, which just makes it another amalgam.
Yeah, and this definitely looks more of like a modern power level. What else is on the level? Grim Tutor was reprinted, which I don't think that card is good enough for Legacy. Like the Storm decks don't even touch it. They did 10 years ago, but they don't anymore. But I don't know how much of that is a function of availability. Probably 0, because Magic Online doesn't play it either, and it's cheap there.
You'd be shocked at the number of people that I've seen in like the Storm Discord that are like, hey, I can finally afford my copy. Maybe I'll test it now. It's like, that's not the reason we weren't playing Grim Tutor for the last 10 years. Like, Dark Petition is better. Wishclaw Talisman is better. There's just better options. Burning Wish is better. Wait, Phil, was that you? But you just don't want to be playing Grim Tutor. Card sucks. But it is now available in Japanese foil.
with sweet art.
Yeah, there is some blood on a book.
So I do know that Brian disagrees with me on this card, and I'm actually going to read what it does for the first time in this episode.
Thank you.
Chandra's Incinerator. 5 and a red for a creature that's an elemental. The spell costs X less to cast, where X is the total number of non-combat damage dealt to your opponents, as in plural, this turn. Trample. Whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, Chandra's Incinerator deals that much damage to target creature or planeswalker that player controls for a 6/6. So why is this good? Why is it bad? Well, it's obvious that it's really cool with Fire Blast because you can play your land on turn 2, float 2 mana, deal 4. Hey, you have 2 mana. That's how much this creature costs now. You don't really want to be sacking your lands on turn 2. Where I think that this is actually pretty cool is with Riftbolt. You suspend it turn 1, turn 2 on your upkeep, you deal them 3, you cast a Chain Lightning. Now you have a 6/6 trample in the face of your opponent's, Delver of Secrets or Tarmogoyf, whatever. Not that Tarmogoyf is legacy playable, but if it were, get in there.
Yeah, I think that this is a magical Christmas land card. Like, we can think of all sorts of neat scenarios where this arrives on turn 2 and just goes unopposed, like it's immune to Fatal Push and blah blah. Like, okay, but the draws out of Burn, where they're like turn 1 suspend Riftbolt instead of turn 1 Goblin Guide or Monastery Swiftspear, I'm pumping the fist because those are their bad draws. So they want repeatable sources of damage in play early and often, and if they like spend their first turn and a half casting spells and then stick this thing that doesn't have haste, doesn't do any damage immediately, and I can just like Swords of Plowshare it or whatever, I'm pretty excited about that. Obviously, Swords to Plowshares is pretty close to the only answer to this thing that really gets played outside of counterspells. Like, you can't push, you can't decay.
Maybe this is a sideboard option then.
Yeah, maybe. Can't red blast it, obviously. Like, you can blue blast it if that card picks up in popularity again. But
so I have a legitimate question about this card, and this just kind of occurred to me now. So, like, from Burn's perspective, is this a good card versus combo? Where, like, normally your only line to beat combo is just, like, I'm going to play Eidolon of the Great Revel and hope that they can't answer it. Is this the sort of thing where, like, this is fat enough, where, like, this plus your initial burn spells actually leaves them dead and leads to a fast enough Goldfish that, like, that's good?
Probably not.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's live in two different timelines here. So timeline 1, I suspend Riftbolt, I go to my next turn, they take 3, I bolt them, they take 3, I cast this. The next turn I attack for 6 with it. So I'm attacking for 6 on turn 3 with this thing. Versus turn 1 Goblin Guide, which also attacks for 6 by turn 3. And you're getting under things rather than having to like set up this difficult thing. Like, I just don't see it fit in the same way. Like, some sort of sideboard option against Bug or like a deck that can't actually answer it might be the home for this thing, but I don't think this is better than the 1-mana haste creatures that already exist in the shell.
Yeah, this is one of those cards where, like, I don't want to be quick to dismiss it because, like, this is very different from most of the cards that we've seen in Red previously. But I'm also not, like, 100% sold that this is the truth.
Yeah, the bottom line of text, whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, this deals damage to target creature or planeswalker they control. If that was, like, double that damage, or, like, Torbrand, like, deals that damage +2, like, kind of effect, rather than a hit their creature and planeswalker, then maybe, like, if you untap, you just win. You're just, like, bolt for 6, bolt for 6, bolt for 6, you're dead. Maybe if things were different, they wouldn't be the same. But I just don't think Burn, in Legacy at least, cares about the creatures or planeswalkers your opponent has. That's kind of the point of playing Burn. Like, if that wasn't flavor text in Legacy, if it was something different, then maybe. But I don't like it.
All right. Quick hit over. Next one. How about Run Afoul? So this is...
Cooked Wings is not Legacy playable, Phil.
I mean, I have played that card, and it was good in multiple decks that contain Chalice of the Void. So, I don't know that I agree. To read the card...
What deck would play this card?
I'm going to read it first! Alright, 1 green for instant. Target opponent sacrifices a creature with flying. This is a really neat sideboard card in that it hits a lot of disparate things. So this is a 1-mana answer to something like Grizzlebrand, Emrakul, Merit Lodge, Delver, all in one card.
I don't hate this one.
Boo.
I don't think it's phenomenal. Like, obviously going to be a one of an evergreen sideboard or anything, but I do think this card is good.
So,
but what deck would play this? Like, Maverick has has Way for Swords. Rug Delver has Petty Theft, as you mentioned earlier. Like, I'm just trying to think of a reasonable home for this card, and I can't think of one.
It will be a deck that has trouble answering large creatures when they get in play. So, I'm going to use Steel Stompy for an example. That's a Chalice deck, so it doesn't want this. But, Steel Stompy, does not have access to colored removal outside of Dismember. So it has a very difficult time with some specific cards. So any large flyer that you show and tell in or reanimate in is a huge problem once it's actually in play. Which is why you saw a lot of the mana bases warped to include things like Karakas. And Clipped Wings in the Green Splash became a way to, safely answer those creatures while also solving your Delver of Secrets problem. Because, again, you're an Ancient Tomb deck, so anytime you're on Ancient Tomb and your opponent's on Delver, you're on the back foot from the get-go. So
For what it's worth, if we're talking about Steel Stompy, Walking Ballista exists, but also Stonecoil Serpent.
Yes, and that has been very, very, very good for the deck.
I think the only thing that I like about Run Afoul is that the artwork is some long-necked dinosaur eating the shit out of some genie. Only good thing about it.
Fuck genies anyway.
Exactly.
Go dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs vs. Genies in theaters near you. Sponsored by the Eternal Glory Podcast.
Dual decks. Dinosaurs versus genies.
Alright. Quick hit. Baron Tolarian Archmage. 1 colorless and 2 blue. Legendary creature, human wizard. 2/2. When it ETBs, return up to 1 other target creature or planeswalker to its owner's hand. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent was put into your hand from the battlefield this turn, draw a card. What do you think of this one?
Former host...
I think
Sorry, Brian, go ahead.
Nope. I think that this goes in creature decks more than traditional blue decks. This is a worse card than Venser in some sort of blue control deck, but in humans, 5-color humans or some Aether Vial deck like Esper Vial, this could have a home.
Works pretty profitably with Karakas and Aether Vial.
Yeah, you can go the fuck off, as the kids say, with all of those things. When I saw this, I immediately thought of getting the boys back together, of Baron and Urza, best friends, BFFs. You just cast Urza, float a bunch of mana, bounce Urza, replay Urza, and then you have more constructs and you draw a card. Obviously, that's not a real legacy interaction. It's just what my child brain, reading the stories about the Brothers' War in 1998, wanted to happen.
I think secretly what I like about this card has nothing to do with what the card actually says. It's that the artwork feels like an old Magic card. And
yes.
That's something we just don't get anymore. This feels like something you might have seen back in Urza's.
Yeah, I noticed going through the spoiler, they brought back some old legends, Mirage Block legends, Mangara is here, Baron's
Kervek,
here.
Right?
Yeah, Kervek is here. I'm scrolling through the spoiler, trying to find them all. One of the green ladies from Mirage is here.
All right, while you're looking, I just want to say I'm so sad about what they did to my boy Mangara. Mangara, legacy staple for so long, one of the core cards of D&D. I got a message and it was Mangara is back, and I'm oh my god, what is it gonna be? And then I got this lifelinky creature, and I was this is probably going to be really good in Standard, but I don't get to play with this.
I like how when
I'm
people
not gonna
decided
lie.
they were going to try to make Death and Taxes better, they cut the card the deck was based around because like, yeah, this card's hot trash.
Yeah, he was the inevitability part of D&T. But when I read the new Mangara, I was just like I've been head down in Standard so long. I read this card and was just like, holy shit, I want 3 of this card in my sideboard right now for this PT. Like, this card is nice. All I ever want in life is to use my white mana to stop red decks from winning. And Mangara is really good at doing that.
Yeah. Like, that is a really cool card. I do really like the design of the card, and it goes with Mangara's diplomatic background. Like, I get it. I just wanted another legacy playable Mangara to replace the hole in my heart.
Yeah, this is not legacy
D&T
playable.
doesn't
I'm sorry.
deserve more creatures, Phil.
Do we get good white spells then? No?
Well, right next to Mangara on the visual spoiler is 9 Lives, which is a new donate combo in Legacy. I'm in a number of Legacy Facebook chats or sites and groups, and somebody posted 9 Lives when it was spoiled. I'll read the card. 1 white enchantment, hexproof. If a source would deal damage to you, prevent that damage and put an incarnation counter on 9 lives. When there are 9 or more incarnation counters on 9 lives, exile it. When it leaves the battlefield, you lose. So it's form of the cat. And I saw this shared in one of the legacy groups I'm in with the caption like, "Is this as bad as I think? OMG," or something like people talk me off the ledge here. I'm going to quit Magic over this card.
Tendrils and Grapeshot are both
like,
very profitable with this card.
Yes. So this combos with Solemnity. Maybe you can build this into Enchantress, Phil. Just make a can't lose to damage engine, which I think Enchantress already has, right? Like that's literally the point of Enchantress. Yeah, Solitary Confinement does that as one card. But with a Donate or Harmless Offering, funny that Harmless Offering's art is a cat coming your way. You could just like get 8 incarnations on this, donate it, and bolt your opponent. Or you could just like have Engineered Explosives on 3 and donate it. So it's just funny to talk about. This is not going to get played, but I just want to assuage the fears of everyone who thinks this is broken.
Solitary Confinement, a card with a drawback that was well designed.
Man, Solitary Confinement is such a fun card to play with when you're on limited resources, and it's just like, oh no, I have 1 enchantment in my hand, but I'm almost dead. Can I play this Solitary Confinement? I get 2 draws to go out of it, but I lose the game if I don't. There's some really weird, very interesting subgames that happen when Solitary Confinement isn't just an immediate blowout that the other person on the other side of the table never gets to see or understand, unfortunately.
Rough life.
So while we're talking about it, 9 Lives has a pretty significant drawback. We were just talking about what Magic cards come with drawbacks. You fucking lose if you take damage 9 times. And it's not prevent all damage you'd be dealt. It's from a source.
So 3 creatures give you 3 counters.
Yes, 3 attacking creatures, or double strike hits you twice. All of those things. Like you said, Grape Shot for 9 is just lethal. So 9 Lives is a powerful enchantment with a serious drawback. And it's when it leaves play, not when it dies.
So the drawback on this is that you would
it.
lose the game, but there's no real cost to playing it.
It costs you a card that could be literally anything else, though.
Yeah, is this going to keep you alive longer than a 2/4 blocker or something? Just some creature.
Like a Mangara?
Is this or Tarmogoyf going to save you more life through combat over the course of a game? Unless you're comboing somehow, this card I think is worse than anything you could put on the battlefield.
You don't even get to blink it with your Yorion to reset it or anything. They thought of that.
All right. If we've spent this much time talking about 9 Lives, I think we're about done. Do we have any more 1 minute or less quick hits for this set? There's a lot of sweet reprints. We got Containment Priest, we got Scavenging Ooze, but I think as far as actually conceivably playable cards, we've gone pretty exhaustive here.
Right before we went live, they announced this new red card. It's 1 red. It deals 2 to any target. It's like a nerfed lightning bolt. What do you think?
It's a tough
I
one.
think it was called Shock.
Yeah, well, I was trying to wrap up, but since you brought up Shock, I started playing in like Tempest, so Shock was originally in Stronghold. That was like my baseline burn spell. I didn't see a lightning bolt for probably like 5 or 6 years after playing Magic, and I was blown the fuck away that this card existed. Like, we talk about power creep. I was like, whoa, that's what old cards did? Like, there's like reverse power creeping down. So I just remember being very impressed by Lightning Bolt. And it's probably the card I own the most different sweet copies of now as an adult.
I hope you all have enjoyed the episode for today. We'll be back in 2 weeks, and if there's any new sweet cards, we'll talk about them. But